Greetings, good people. Welcome back to Leaders and Learners, where accountability meets excellence and where we pull real game from real game changers. I'm Tanya McKenzie, your host, and today we are stepping into the batter's box with Joe Sperle, founder of Freedom Pro Baseball League, elite instructor to hundreds of college and pro bound athletes, and the author of Behind the Athlete's Guide to Success. Joe has turned overlooked players into MLB signees, built opportunities where there were none, and survived a near fatal accident that should have ended everything. Instead, he rewrote the script. This is a conversation about talent, tenacity, and showing your own comeback story. So let's hear it from my guy, Joe. How are you?
Doing great, Tanya. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it so much. So, listen, I want to get into how you got to a point to where you felt like you needed to write a book and talk about your experiences in your lessons.
I think, all the years playing, Tanya, I was, that's what was my sanctuary. Finding my mom passed when I was 11. She swam the English Channel. I grew up in Scotland. I saw a need of a lot of mentoring and coaching that wasn't happening in my years. I was blessed to have enough natural talent where I was able to excel, but I did have a part where I didn't really have a lot of coaches that really knew how to develop. I said in the book, a lot of great athletes can perform, but it's hard to be a coach or a teacher. So that was what started to lead me into doing the Freedom League, was because there's a shortage of people that know how to identify, develop, and lead talented athletes. It's a very hard thing to do when you think about the NFL, the NBA, MLB. They fire head coaches and managers every year. So then I started to do a lot of youth, instruction, to do a lot of mentoring and doing some pitching and hitting lessons, and had many were successful and went on and played in college and drafted by MLB. And then I started to see many were starting to drift off and quit and not play and had bad experiences. And so I said, well, we're going to write this book, Athlete's Guide to Success, a roadmap to becoming a champion, so it can give a good, roadmap. Because as parents, a lot of times you have a talented athlete and you need somebody that can give you that roadmap, because parents will say to me, I didn't play. I don't know what to do. I just have a boy that has passion to play baseball. And so I really started to go into some statistics and just took 3 years to on and off write it. And as one mom, I like to throw some humor in. Imagine her grandfather was quite an athlete. He played football at Harvard and baseball at Stanford, and she had a son who loved baseball and came to me, and then I said, you have to read my book. And she says, why? I think that all you men coaching are not, you're kind of full of baloney. So after she read the first chapter, Tanya, she started crying. She said, finally, somebody gets it, and I'm not the problem.
No, definitely not the problem. But it does help to have people around that can educate, elevate, and empower parents with what the right thing is to do, right? Because I think so many times we're left out there as parents to just try to figure it out.
Exactly. And that's why, the old saying years ago, Tanya, was you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But I now say to these parents, you can lead a thoroughbred horse to water. The ones that drink reach their potential and become champions. The ones that don't drink don't reach their potential and go to the pasture and die. And that's sad when we have a lot of talented athletes that are in this youth complex system, that at age 13 or older, as NCAA and National Alliance of Youth Sports did a study that's eye-opening, and it's 7 out of 10 boys and girls age 13 and older are quitting sports because of burnout, overuse injury, too many of these pressured coaches from dads. Parents want that college scholarship, and they're not having fun. If you're not having fun, it's very hard in this use these days to keep playing. And I've many of them say, I'm done, Mom. I'm done, Dad. And we need as a society to keep them busy and stay off the phones and the computers.
You know, I wanted to ask you, developing players who went to like UCLA, USC, ASU, U of A, um, That takes a lot. What is the one difference between athletes who want it and athletes who actually go get it?
I think some of it is just a natural God given gift that they have the drive. Um, Usually, it takes a spark that happens in their life. A lot of times, the parent pushing them doesn't work. It has to come from internal, just love, passion. You have to have a huge passion to play any sport in college. And I think the ones that I had that went on to play at those colleges you mentioned were just really passionate. And then I lit the fire in them and gave them a lot of good physical, and mental ability. And then they just excelled. And, Scottsdale Chaparral High School in Phoenix went on and very, very talented, high academic and sports college or high school. They won back to back in 2011 and 12, and I individually trained 80% of them. Those really took to the things, but some have if they have too much given to them, they kind of don't want to suck it up and be really tough, which to play college, they would come to me and they would say, Coach, I didn't realize how much it took to play baseball in college. I joke now, it's years ago when I was coming up, you went to classes and then you played the sport. Now you pretty much play the sport and then you go to class second. It's intense. It's a lot of hours.
I had a Syracuse football player not too long ago come on and talk about the jump between what it feels like to play at high school and then to college. Talk about that from a baseball perspective. What is the jump for kids? What's the biggest change in their life and their quality of life from high school to college baseball?
I think the biggest thing is that there's so much more pressure on them. They have to perform, and as we know, baseball is a game of statistics. So if you're pitching and you're not getting guys out and you're walking guys, you don't get to play. And same way, big part is hitting. And many guys, when you get to the college level, all these guys can throw 90, 95 nowadays. When I was coming up, we were 85, 90. Now all of a sudden it's 90, 95 miles an hour. But when you have a ball coming at you, that speed, and then you see a slider at 70 and a change up at 75, it's a very hard thing to do, and you have to have an exceptional hand-eye coordination and be able to handle the pressure because these colleges now, as you see with ESPN, the mountain is coming in this in the college sports now. Even now in baseball, they've upped it to 34 scholarships where it used to be only 11.7. They're really having the coaches are saying we got to go after it because they have pressure, they're going to get fired. So I think the big jump is you have to be able to handle a lot of pressure and can handle the academic load and just really work like you're working a job at 50 hours a week because it's baseball now is so competitive where it was always football was, but now that we're seeing a lot more people can play. The reason I was a quarterback in high school and point guard and pitcher shortstop, but as baseball, your body can last. Like I played in the 40 and over masters for years, whereas as football and basketball, the body can't keep playing. So it's becoming more and more a big thing in the colleges for. That's why NCAA upped it to 34 scholarships now.
Do you like that change that they've made?
Yeah, I do because there was so many times that guys would come to me and they'd be like, well, what do you think, coach? Where should I go? I said, well, what do you offer? 25% books and tuition. I said, no, you're way better than that. Like a pitcher throwing 90, 92 in high school. And, the draft, they would draft them. But if you're drafted in a lower round, Tanya, it's not enough you to forego, college scholarships. So I tell them, but now that they're able to offer full scholarship and tuition, that's a lot better because before 11.7, they had to divide that amongst 35 players. So you maybe give one or two pitchers or a catcher, which is key, 90%, and then you had to give 25% of a scholarship. So there wasn't much compared to football and basketball. So now NCAA is seeing that there's a need to do that, which is great because now you can give full scholarships to 34 players.
Yeah, I think I feel like a lot of players have a hard time recognizing where a good fit is for them in college, right? It's not always, even though the goal might be D1, there might be a D2 school that's better for them, or an NAIA school. How do you help players recognize the fit over the division for them in regards to where they decide to pursue their higher education?
That's a great question. I get asked that a lot because everybody, wherever you grow up, everybody wants to play. Like in Arizona, everybody wants to play at Arizona State, University of Arizona. You grow up in California, where you're at, you want to play at USC, UCLA, San Diego State. Well, it's very hard to do that. So I tell them academically, if you're not really, 3.5, 3.9, you need to look at community college because it's in Arizona has very good community college, in California also, and Florida and some of these, to where you end up getting to play right away as a freshman and sophomore, and then you can be eligible to be drafted, Tanya. Whereas you signed to a 4-year school like UCLA, you can't be drafted by Major League Baseball until your junior year or age 21. Plus, you're only playing against freshmen and sophomore in a community college, and you can get in and play right away. If you go in, and it's very tough. I've had some guys that were a catcher that was amazingly talented, and he ended up going to community college and then led the nation as a hitting catcher, and then went to Arizona State and then led the Pac-10, and back then when it was Pac-10 and RBIs. But he was one of the best I've seen in my 15 years. And if he would have went to Arizona State his first year, he wouldn't have played, Tanya. So it's a real thing that I'm steering more and more. And I've had some very talented players that I had to talk into. They thought, well, it's just a glorified high school. No, community college is great athletics. Anytime you can put on a college uniform, that's great. And then the tuition's lower, and you just get your basics in. And it's not, as much as a big, huge classroom. Some of these schools like UCLA, Arizona State, they have 200, 300 in classrooms.
Is that conversation more with parents or with the athlete? Because sometimes I feel like parents really be taking over the decision based on what they want or trying to live vicariously through their kids. I could be wrong. Let me know what you think.
No, you're exactly right. In these days, we kind of joke they're helicopter parents, and there's so many of them that are coaching them at a young age in little league or tournament teams, and it definitely comes out that they're living through the child, the son or daughter. But realistically, the college coaches, they talk to me, and I've had many that I refer. They don't want those that the parents are really making the decisions. I tell them as a chapter in my book there what to look for in coaches and questions to ask, college recruiters or the head coach, and that needs to have some of the parent involved, but the athlete has to be reaching out and passionate and making sure that it's what they want academically, which is a real thing I stress. But sometimes they're like, well, coach, I don't know what I want to do. Well, then you should start taking some, you know, academic tests and start to feel things out, which is a good way to go in community college or, even D3 NAIA and have a chance to play. But you're so right that they really are. That's the reason why a lot of boys and girls are quitting, Tanya, is because they're feeling huge parental pressure. I've had some at age 12, 13. I even see in some of these Facebook groups. They're like, well, we spent $15,000. You better get a college scholarship. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. That doesn't work, Tanya. That they'll say usually about 15, 16 when they get a car, Tanya, they say, I'm done. I quit. And then the moms cry.
Yeah, I just, it's hard because, we want the best for our kids. At the same time, I think a lot of parents miss that it's not their journey anymore, right? So I used to
So true.
run a fitness facility. I was a director at a YMCA, and I had a gentleman bring his son in one morning, and his son had to be like maybe 11 or 12 or something. And he was just so adamant about me letting him take his son into the sauna because he needed to hurry up and shed some weight because he had weigh in for football and he needed to make a certain team. And I was like, absolutely not. Like it wound up being a really gross scene, but I was like, no, absolutely not. And we wound up having to ask him to leave. And I told him we have fitness programs for youth if he wants to enroll him. But yeah, that was unhealthy, and I'm not doing that. So I want to ask you, what's the most insane thing that you have seen in regards to athlete training with baseball players?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I have some really good stories of some that it's usually the dads. Dads are, they're driven. And it's usually the type A personality, right? The business owner are attorneys or doctors. And the one I remember, it was a heart surgeon. He was Dr. Rick Kirshner. Really loved the game, but he actually wished he'd been a baseball player. He loved Roberto Clemente. He was from Pittsburgh,
Mm.
if you remember Roberto. I actually played in Roberto's stadium in Puerto Rico, and his widow threw the ball out. It was an amazing
Oh
experience. But
wow.
yeah, it was awesome. And Roberto was a great story. But what happened is that he was really pushing his kids, and he'd be like, he'd be with his scrubs on one field, and I'm on with the other son working hitting, and I'm walking by, and he's like, he got done probably saving somebody's life, and he's like, Joe, this game's a lot harder than what I do. I said, wait a minute, Doc, let's get this straight. When I teach your boys to pitch or hit or whatever, and they don't do well, they lose. When you screw up, people die. And he's like, yeah, I guess so. So he would still, when I would do lessons, he would kind of be, pushing. I'd be like, Doc, we gotta just back off. And then I used this analogy, which I said, heard of Joe Montana? And he said,
Mm.
yeah, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, played with the 49ers. And I saw you grew up in the Bay Area. You've heard that name.
Doing
And
your
I said,
research.
yeah. And I said that ESPN did a story on him and his son. His son was coming up through the ranks, going to play high school quarterback, and they got a guy, coach at Stanford, quarterback, and had him work with him. So ESPN announcer came to him and said, Joe, why don't you train your son? You're like the top 5 quarterbacks ever. You're Mr. Ice. You won 2, 3 Super Bowls. He says it doesn't work. He said, I'll love him. I'll tell him to take the garbage out, mow the lawn, and I'll just let the guy here do it. And when I use that analogy to this doctor, Dr. Kirshner, he just kind of went, whoa, well, Joe Montana did. I better back out and let you do it. So it takes a lot to say, hey, I'm not a heart surgeon, but I played baseball, and I know what I'm doing. And he did a real good testimony. He said every time I'm with his boys, they're smarter and stronger. These dads, when they're docs and attorneys and business owners, I could go on with a lot of stories. Guys, you just gotta kind of sometimes just tell them, hey, go get some coffee, and if you smoke a cigar, go smoke a cigar. I'll take it from here.
Yeah, go relax. Let me do what I
Yeah,
do. You go over there and do what you
yeah,
do. It's so funny you bring up
and
Joe Montana. When I graduated from high school, I was so adamant about going away to college. And my aunt was friends with, she worked for the San Jose Mercury News, and she was trying to bribe me to not leave because I went to Grambling University in Louisiana. And she was like, don't go. I can get you a job as Joe Montana's nanny for his kids. Man, she
wow,
knew so. I was this close. I was this close. That's how much I love my 49ers. I was this close to being like, I'll just go to San Jose State so I can nanny for Joe Montana, but I left. So
how about that? So that had to ring a little bell that I brought him up. Yeah, he was emulated coming up in Johnny Unitas and Fran Tarkenton when I was playing in high school. But that was definitely some of the teams they had back then were pretty amazing, and they were tough to beat. If you gave him the football 2 minutes left, he was going to score.
listen, I love me some baseball, but I tell you, I don't know anybody with a better arm than Joe Montana. Okay.
Yep, and pinpoint it. I mean, these guys are amazing when you see them in person. And I watched them. I lived in Rockland where they trained before they left, and these guys, it's an art. I could throw 40, 45 yards, but when you got to let it go, these guys before they turn, these are definitely some gifted guys. And I had a lot of fun playing football too, but baseball was where my heart and passion, where I knew I could keep playing, and which I did, playing the Masters, and like I told you, in Puerto Rico and all over. I used to fly around. I was the kind of the ringer. They'd fly in, I'd pitch and play short and hit home runs.
Love that. Love hearing it. I want to ask you your thoughts on when I was growing up, uh, everyone was encouraged to play multiple sports. And now baseball has become more like a year round sport. obviously it does damage to young kids and young boys and their arms, especially pitchers, outfielders who are throwing the long ball. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you get parents and even kids who are incredibly competitive to recognize that, hey, it's important that you, one, play multiple sports, and two, take time off?
Great question. I addressed this in the book because I've seen so many burnout and arm injuries that baseball you need to take a break from. And even I write in the book, major and minor league players take, if you're a pitcher, take 2 months off. They'll go into September. And I also wrote in the book that in the 2018 NFL draft, 2020 of 2040 players drafted played more than one sport in high school, which I stress that because, like I said, back when I was coming up, I was a quarterback and I punted also, played safety, and then I played point guard in the winter, and then in the spring I played baseball, and that works. But what happens, you're exactly right, is that, I have a Freedom ball here that I was going to brought that's got, actually, I'm one of the only guys to have his own ball, Freedom
Oh,
Baseball,
wow.
signature, Freedom Pro Baseball, President Joe Sperle. But throwing this 5-ounce ball, Tanya, and doing a lot of this, throwing these curveballs with kids do, that puts a strain on your elbow and your shoulder. And Dr. James Andrews, who does a lot of the surgeries for major and
Hmm.
minor leaguers in college, he now told me that 50% of his surgeries on are between 13 and 18-year-olds.
Are you
That's from
kidding me?
overuse. It's really sad. I see kids walking around. I can tell when they got this sling on, Tanya, and they got this little knob here on the elbow. That's a
Hmm.
Tommy John elbow ulnar collateral replacement. That these are playing too much, and it is really a thing that is overuse. And I've devised a way that to throw properly that I've had some even on Google Meet now. I had a college guy that contacted me and said his elbow he's been in treatment, but it still hurts. So I helped him. He was a candidate for surgery, and I got him to, with some tricks over the years, got him to throw properly. But you're right. You definitely, parents, you listening, one sport specializing very rarely works. The passion's
Very
gone.
rarely.
Injuries, yes, the injuries happen that you just doesn't, and especially baseball where you're throwing all the time. And the number one thing is the shoulder and the elbow are not made to do this. You can go this way fast pitch. These women can go that motion. You can do that, back to back, but you can't go this way without doing some damage. And there's a huge amount in this Facebook group, Baseball Moms, where they have growth plate separation, they have fractures, they have, tendonitis. I mean, it's that's a great question, Tony, which I've really been stressing to not do any of that. The guy I learned from, Gil Patterson, imagine this, Tony, he was drafted 4 times in the first round before there was enough to offer, and then he went with the Yankees and worked his way all the way through, was a phenom. He ended up having 5 shoulder and 3 elbow surgeries. Unbelievable. And he
The
came back
damage.
one year and threw the other arm, Tanya, which is in my book about how Whitey Ford, the greatest Yankee pitcher, told him, why don't you try and throw left-handed? But that's why I really stressed, and I had soreness, but I never had surgery. So now with all that from watching him and putting things together, you have to play more one sport. I stress that because you've watched enough football. If the NFL is drafting 90% of their players that have played more than one sport in high school, that's the route that works, parents and people listening.
Yep, absolutely. Listen, Joe, I know that you've signed over 200 or so overlooked players and got them drafted and looked at, right? What is MLB consistently missing in its scouting pipeline that you're able to see clearly? And did you include that in your book?
Yeah, I did. There's some players that a great one that was Eli Sinoki that is still the highest inner city pick for in Phoenix, Arizona, which is a big hotbed where I put the Freedom Pro Baseball League together. And then they just didn't develop him. They wore him out. It didn't develop his hitting ability, and his arm became sore. Played first, and then he came to a tryout, and he just put on a display. And then I'm working with him, and he's like, I want to kind of pitch too. He was left-handed because that'll give another route to get back into the, Major League affiliated baseball. So I started working with him, and just amazing what they missed on development and just I had a home run derby in 2013 at the Goodyear Stadium, which is the spring training stadium of the Reds and Guardians. And those stadiums are like 340 down the line, 400 in the center. He's hitting balls over the elevator. They're going out into the street. I'm like, wow. So I wrote about him in the book. There was so much talent that showed up at my workouts. It was hard, and the scouts were coming to me. They're like, "Where are you getting these guys?" I said, "They're coming to me, and I'm picking them. There's so many you guys are missing out there." That was part of the vision, Tanya, was let me pick them and develop them. Don't sign them and give them all the signing bonus, and they never last more than a year or two. And then you come to me and buy the contract. That was, like I said earlier, there's a shortage. It's hard to do when you think about this, Tanya. You've been around sports, to identify and lead and develop talented athletes. That's a hard thing to do. It really is. And that's an act that I was able to do, to really watch a lot of these guys. Even I had a Moneyball player that was a second round pick that was in the movie Moneyball, and he wanted him to hit home runs, and he was a center fielder, 5'8", 150 pounds, Tanya, Steve Stanley. He showed up. It was like a meant to be serendipity. He showed up at one of the tryouts I had, and sent me his stuff beforehand. And I'm like, "You were a Moneyball pick?" And he said, "Yeah, I was." They called me and said, "Hey, would you go second round if you take less?" Well, he's like, "Sure." And then he plays 4 years, and he was married and had a daughter, and they didn't make enough back then, so he didn't get to see him play. And then he demoted him from AAA in Sacramento, where I grew up, out to AA in Texas. So he said he wanted to get released. Well, then he started insurance business, and then he had 2 more girls, and then he felt that God was leading him back to play. So I was down at the A's complex. Keith Lipman was the minor league developer, and I told him, if you have any guys that have good character and that you have to release because of the draft, you guys are going to draft more, let me know. And he said, well, Steve called him right after I was there, and he's like, Keith, you think you need a 28-year-old center fielder? He's like, nah, I don't think so, Steve, but Joe's starting this Freedom Pro Baseball League, and give him a call. So he called me. I'm like, come to the tryout. He didn't even have his glove or anything left anymore. This is part we're going to put in the movie, but he could still play. And I said, I want you to be the chaplain and the team leader of the Arizona Centennials. His kids got to see him play every game that never got to see. And then the one kid caster, unbelievable. She got up there, and then first night at the end of 3 outs we gave her, she's like, dang, my dad didn't get to bat. And I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. And she said, thanks. Oh, sorry, folks, come tomorrow night. So I told my staff, get her up there when Steve hits tomorrow night. So we're at Scottsdale Stadium with the spring training and the Giants, and I'm coaching that third, managing that team, and all of a sudden he starts walking up, and she was just 9 years old, just like a professional announcer, and she says, now batting number 5, my dad, Steve.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
It was like all the work, Tanya, that I did to put that league together, 2 years to get that stadium, and all the players and it was just so much that was worth it. And then he couldn't even hit, Tanya. He stepped in the box and he looked up to the press box and he was just smiling ear to ear. I mean,
I bet. Oh my God. Can you even imagine? That's crazy. So since you're talking about girls, what do you think about the women's baseball league and the expansion in the pro softball league?
I think it's awesome. I actually have been involved with helping someone on women's pro baseball league that just got started. I've often said there's going to be a girl throw and a woman throw, low 80s, and now we're just starting to get them developed. And it was actually at the Durham Bulls Stadium last October, and they had the Durham Bulls owner has a granddaughter that's really good in baseball, so he flew in 4 teams of these girls and put them in hotels. And I was watching them, and I'm like, wow, these girls and women can play. They had a left fielder. I called her the Jackie Robinson of women's baseball. She laid out and pulled and caught a ball, and it bounced out of her glove and went down 5 concrete steps, Tanya. And I'm like, get the ambulance out there. She come walking out, and incredible. So it's really going to be a thing. They're going to be playing next August, and I've been doing some consulting. But here's a really neat story about that. The League of Their Own Annabelle Lee, who I played with her nephew, Bill Spaceman Lee, 14-year Red Sox, father-son World Series. That's a great concept that the dads have to pitch 4 innings and you have to have 4 dads on the field. Well, his aunt, Annabelle Lee, pitched a perfect game in that league. She was a tomboy that her dad played. And when the war broke out, they came to her and said, Annabelle, we heard you're a good player and we want you to play in the All American Girls Professional Baseball League, but you have to wear a dress. So I'm a tomboy. I'm not wearing a dress. And she told me this story. She sat in the dugout when we were playing in Phoenix, and he said, "Well, I understand you work at the bank." And he said, "How much do you make?" She said, $95 a month. He said, "We'll give you $85 a week, Annabelle, to wear a dress." She said, "I'll wear a dress."
Wow. I
And
love that.
they went this
Um,
way and threw a perfect game. Next year, they made him go overhand with the
mhm.
Minneapolis team, and she threw a no hitter. Yeah, she had quite the stories. So I'm excited, and the softball is going good, too. I think there's some really really good women and athletes out there. I was impressed.
I ain't gonna lie. I'm hoping to see Monet Davis get out there and do what she
You
did
know,
in Little League and show these grown men that she can still handle them. So I wanna. I'm keep my fingers crossed on that one. We'll see how it all
yeah,
works out. But I would love to see her shut it
yeah,
down one day. That would be pretty dope. Let the
for
people
sure.
know really quick. What else? What other gems do you have in your book? Because I definitely want them to go out and support the book. One, and then we get to talk about your film.
Yeah, I think the big thing in there also is that we really have to understand the roadmap. Like you mentioned, the jump from high school to college, and then the next level to the professional level, because there's a lot of what I say in this youth tournament stuff. There's a lot of people, parents think there's a gold mine at the end, which is a college scholarship or professional contract, but that rarely happens in this system that they're doing. So that book, the roadmap, the way I laid it out in the end of each chapter, I have a lot of summaries that will really help you get through the navigate this complex sports world and avoid the pitfalls. Because as I know you have a passion for youth, I do. We want them to keep playing, and if you don't read the book, then you're going to go to the pasture and die probably, and that's not fun if you've been doing 4 or 5 years and traveling and spending a lot of expense, and then all of a sudden it comes to an end. And I've had moms that come to me and are crying, and I'm like, well, you didn't listen. You got to open your minds and listen. And that's the big thing that I want to stress, Tanya. Parents, and you've been there. They need to listen to this podcast and open their mind. And I know it works. This stuff works. That's why I wrote the book. There's success stories in there that I shared. One of Eli and another one that was cut in high school and went on and played 4 years and flew on a jet from Utah Valley to USC, UCLA. So I think that's a big thing that seems to be, we're all set in our ways, but don't don't close minded. Open your mind and read it and listen.
Absolutely. I know people want to, try things that they've heard about and things get trendy in sports, but trust me, some things are very standard and you do not want to have to go through the mistakes, which can be incredibly expensive or costly to your child's physical abilities when you don't take heed and lessons from people that have been through it. So I would highly suggest that you get Athlete's Guide to Success and continue to follow and support Joe. Joe, your life is literally becoming a film. What part of your story do you think will impact audiences the most and why?
I think initially starting out, just was born blessed and gifted as a not natural all around athlete. And then my mom being kind of fish out of water from Scotland, and then met my dad who was a farmer, and we sold the farm and moved to Sacramento. And then just coming up, and then she was all excited, fell in love with the Oakland A's and San Francisco Giants, and then finding her past at home was huge trauma. I blocked that out, Tanya, because it was too much. I actually came home from the semifinal game of a little league to get to the Williamsport and won the game and shut out the team and had scored 3 runs. And then I blocked it out and went to the next game, the championship, and had the team shut out 1-0. Then later on, we find out the guy was 15 and hit a long home run. I can still see that ball go, Tanya. But that,
Wow.
I mean, raising a younger brother, because my dad pretty much had so many issues from the war, and his dad died from mosquito encephalitis, and then his mom
Mm.
from tuberculosis. So that led into a lot of the perseverance and the drive to be a good athlete, and then founding the Freedom Pro Baseball League, of the great stories of one of the only guys to do a whole league like that, of signing and giving guys opportunity, and then going to build a stadium in North Carolina, because the stadiums are tough to deal with. The cities don't understand and have the expertise, and that's going to be a real interesting thing out of Tucson. There's a lot of corruption that was going on down there that really was, that I had to expose, that was very interesting, that will be in the movie. But then all of a sudden, I'm doing a team that there were the Bad News Bears, that a guy came to me and said he was going to do individual instruction at an indoor facility, and the guy wasn't picking him on his teams. And he said, "Can you do a team?" So I said, "Well, I really don't want them. I'm going to build a stadium." But they had built 3 stadiums already in North Carolina. So I did the team, and we were getting killed. I mean, finally, I got them to all pull together, and we won a tournament that the guy took one of my players, hoping to shut me down. And then I'm coming home in North Carolina, in the area we like, the nice quiet area, and there's a ton of deer. I missed a bunch. One of them, I pulled the wheel, and all I remember is the brakes went off. And next thing I woke up, Tanya, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, what happened? I'm like, well, I didn't see Jesus, so I'm still alive. I thought I was on the roof. I hollered for an hour because I'm like, my life flashed in front of me. I'm thinking, I have 2 granddaughters that are really athletic and really smart. And my son, is a drag racer now. And I'm thinking of Holly, and all this is, and I'm like, I'm using all my techniques to breathe, because I'm knowing, I'm like, my back was tight, and I'm in trauma. I didn't know my neck was broke. And I'm like, finally, a woman, Tanya, said, "We see." It was like my angel. I went, wow. Then I went out. And then I went in and out of consciousness and had to have emergency neurosurgery. And the crazy part about that, Tanya, is that I want to really educate people. It's going to be in the movie, on how the medical system is really failing people. And I was at 4 rehabs, and over 500,000 insurance from 3 in North Carolina. The second one, Holly, my wife found out that they had a 48 million they got to pay back the U.S. attorney for overcharging Medicare, and I'm like, wow, I just want to get strong. And they made my leg and core strength go backwards. So I've been having, good thing I was an athlete, but with this injury, I had a fractured neck. You don't walk, but I'm walking now with the walker. But I'm telling you, it's been a journey, and that's where I was approached to do a movie, because my whole life has been like hitting curveballs.
Perfect analogy. Absolutely perfect
Yeah,
analogy.
so it's
Listen,
going to be
I
stories.
that's a blessing. Okay, I just
Yeah,
wanted to let you know I recognize what a blessing that is. And as hard as that is, even situations that aren't as extreme, you are 100% right. Our medical system is failing us. Our
yes,
medical system is failing us. We should not have to go into debt to survive. That's literally what you're saying, is to save your life and to save your ability to be mobile in this life, it will set you back. And it makes absolutely no sense.
exactly. What it is I've had to sell, like, at first place, I didn't know what was going on. What the failed part of it is, the neurosurgeon and the physical doctor rehab. They should have been supervising my physical trainers, my PT. I mean, and they weren't physical therapists. They were just, at the end. I was there 3 weeks, and I'm like, "You guys have a plan? Are you talking to the rehab doctor or the neurosurgeon?" No. I said, "So who's your supervisor? Then when do you see him? Once a year. When's that? A performance review?" I'm like, "Wait a minute. This is, so you guys are just sitting back having a free wheel, having a good old thing, and collecting off my insurance." And then the second place I told you, they were just, I'm going to expose that, because they just assumed were going to kill me and tried to get me out because I knew about it. The whole thing, what I want people to understand is that, I know you have a great, I've looked at your background. If we have a bad product or service, we shouldn't get paid for it. And this medical industry is still getting paid and having high payroll. And the number one thing that I'm going to continue to say is that the reason they're in their position where they're doing this because nobody's doing anything around, and their paycheck's the same. And I'm in this journey. We're going to document stuff and put in the movie that they're literally killing people that
They
I've
are.
seen guys do pool work, and it is really needs an overhaul. I say youth sports needs a reset, and so does the medical industry. I have a nurse that she liked the Freedom League, and she said to me that she got rectal cancer, and now she decided to take chemo and radiation. And she heard my story. She said, "Wow, you got a story." She said, "But I have to tell you, Joe, I work for the mafia." I went, "Wow, that's a good description because we can't allow this. We need some government changes, and this is not acceptable." That here I am. I should right now, Tanya, if I would have been on heart medication to keep my blood pressure up and had a personal trainer, I would be in Scotland where I wanted to see where my mom. I finally found her side golfing.
I love that for her. Wow. I the
It was bad.
malpractice in medicine is scary. And the fact that it's not even more regulated is, I don't know. I'm looking forward to the movie. Why don't you let the people know what's coming up for you, how they can follow you, follow your journey, and continue to support you, and when they can watch this movie?
Yeah, right now you can. I have a website, the www Joe Sperle, JoeSperle projects.org. It's currently there. It's under maintenance, but it'll be up today or tomorrow. It talks a lot about what I've done with the Freedom League, my recovery process, a lot of things that we want to also help with the Women's Pro League. That in pre-production, we now are hopefully next August, September, it will come out, and it's going to be a lot of things. The thing that I want for this movie, Tanya, is I want people to go back and still have hope and help each other, and that's try to remove some selfishness. I've seen so much in this journey of guys that I played with and was an MVP and really carried and even worked in their cars, and guys that I signed. It's like we got to go back to the old school stuff. And I want when people walk out of that movie to say, "Wow, that guy had a story, and what he did with no parents, and then had his life disrespect, almost died, and still wants to instill in people to pull together and help each other." And that's because the one way my way street doesn't work. It usually ends up in a dead end, as we know. There's more two-way streets we drive on. So that's what I want people to be excited to see. And the amazing part of sports is it's part of life, and there's some crazy stuff that I went through and went on and played pro softball and flew around. So it's going to be some things that right now the script writers are like, "You have so much, we don't know what to put in." I said, "Well, let's keep the whole storyline, so I continue to make an positive impact." And that's what I know you've done with your podcast and use. I think we need to bring that back because that seems to be lost in this selfish way, my way, that's been taught by marketing and TVs and the phones.
Absolutely. And all of the information that you gave me for the book, and your website will be in the captions. So you guys make sure you run on over there, you check out the book because we're trying to make America read again. The art of reading, comprehending, and actually using good information to improve your quality of life. It's a lost art. So we're back at that. So we're gonna make America read again. Go grab the book. Make sure you stay connected to Joe. And Joe, please stay connected to us so that we can continue to support you in your journey and what you have going on.
I sure will. I really appreciate being on. I know you in the LA County Commission, you're doing a lot because what's happening also is when these players aren't listening, mostly the parents that the younger. I've had many that go on and went down that road, and then they're now in college at University of Arizona and U of A, and they've told me they have deep wounds from this time yet, and they have alcohol and drug issues. So
They
we
do.
need to really keep aware of that and make sure. So I'll stay in touch because I think we have to keep impacting the youth because that's our future, no question.
Yeah. I think we're going to have a part two to this, Joe. So stay connected.
Okay, I sure will. It was great to
All
be
right.
on.
You guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you
You,
soon.
you too, Tanya.
Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What you think about today's episode, and share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.